Hello, my friend. It's Gina. Thank you for continuing the long journey in the effort to find justice for Elizabeth. This is an account that's based on a true story, one that, as of this recording, remains ongoing. Welcome back to Lost Sister, a Discarded Woman, Episode 13. Content warning: this and future episodes contain sensitive topics and may cause distress to some listeners. Hearing disturbing actions of oppression, manipulation, and abuse can bring up painful memories, personal struggles, and trauma for many. Narrators note, the names have been changed and places are purposefully arbitrary to protect the privacy of those involved. This podcast is our way of telling Catherine and Elizabeth's story so that others can be aware of potential future issues. The central figures in our story include Catherine, her sister Elizabeth, Elizabeth's husband Walter, and Walter's granddaughter Darcy. Additional figures are Elizabeth's elder brother and current guardian, Charles, the attorney who represents Elizabeth's family, Alex, and Sam, the assistant county attorney. Let's recap episode 12. In the last episode, our discussion focused on the path forward for Catherine and Elizabeth's family. Everything that had seemed to be moving forward, slowly, but advancing, seemed to grind to a halt. At least the investigation side of things. Darcy's newest attorney was stalling, encouraging Alex to persuade the family to make Darcy an offer. The family reluctantly agreed to at the very least, to see which way the wind was blowing. Well, there was not a stir of a breeze to be had. So the family is moving forward with a civil lawsuit. Elizabeth's care is expensive. Charles, as Elizabeth's guardian, along with Catherine and the other siblings, must try everything they can to access Elizabeth's assets that Darcy has a stranglehold on. Whether Darcy's newest attorney is attempting to help her legally or it's just another scheme to stall is yet to be seen. Whatever it was, it sure sounds like this latest attorney of Darcy's is likely very aware of the misappropriation of funds and perhaps is making an attempt to keep her from as much legal damage as possible. As the civil lawsuit proceeds, the family chooses to pursue a bench trial. As a reminder, a bench trial is where the judge themselves will determine the verdict. There will not be a jury. Alex has placed liens on the two properties that seem to be tied to the assets of Walter and Elizabeth. The small house Walter purchased and the big estate Darcy purchased, with cash, for over $750,000. Darcy can't sell the properties while a lien is in place. It also makes it very difficult to take a loan against a property as well. As we continue our story, if you remember in the previous episode, the detective had assured Catherine that even though Charles, as Elizabeth's guardian, and the family are pursuing a civil lawsuit against Darcy, Elizabeth's case is still open, and that both the detective and Catherine have now been contacted by the FBI agent that's been assigned to Elizabeth's case. That's right, there is now a real-life FBI agent assigned. As I understand, there may not be news from them for a while. However, I can report that the FBI encouraged Catherine to push the local authorities, meaning the county, the district, and the state, to charge Darcy with any and all misdemeanors possible. The agent also advised Catherine to try to find someone in the media to report on this matter. And that's a whole different kettle of fish. You see, investigative reporters are extremely rare these days. Newspapers have long since abandoned staff reporters for the more economical choice of buying individual stories instead. But the never say never Catherine is trying, reaching out to several media organizations and directly to some national reporters. By taking on this podcast, I'm in hopes that it might gain enough traction to entice an actual investigative reporter somewhere. So, please, if you know of somebody who knows somebody that knows a reporter who might be interested in this story, please share this with them. Getting the story out is extremely important to Catherine, and even though she wouldn't understand, for Elizabeth and the other Elizabeths out there now, and unfortunately for those to come. Okay, it all sounds like this case is moving forward, sorta. Now that there's a police detective and an FBI agent on the case, Catherine had hoped they would take over and she could finally stop worrying about anything more than Elizabeth's care. Instead, it's back to the drawing board and more work. One might think that if you know of a crime being committed, that you could just go to the police station, talk to someone who would take notes, that they would ask some questions. Maybe you might have to fill out some forms, give them all the proof you have, and that would be it. The police would investigate, and once they had enough to charge the perpetrator, they would take it to their superiors, who would in turn take it to the prosecutor. And if they couldn't find enough, or even any evidence that would stand up in court, well, that would be that. And you just tuck your tail and learn to accept the fact that there either wasn't a crime at all or just no evidence to be found. Right? Like on TV or the movies. We've seen it, read about it, all of our lives. No. Nein. Ni. Now. Niet. Nay. Just plain old no. Not how it works at all. Again, if you've been following our story, you know that Catherine started investigating on her own since the very beginning when she couldn't find Elizabeth and Walter. All of the information she had gathered was turned over to Alex and Sam after the guardianship hearing where Catherine was appointed, because Sam had voiced concern about what was going on with Elizabeth. Catherine continues to turn over any new information and paperwork as she gets it. She does the same with the police detective, the district attorney, and the FBI. So, what's actually going on that has this case so stuck? Remember how everyone above Sam and the police detective overused the excuse of not enough manpower, not enough bandwidth. It boils down to money, folks. Plain and simple money. In 2021, state and local governments spent $135 billion on police and $52 billion on the courts. By the way, that does not include the corrections section of the justice system. We all understand basic marketing, right? Someone has something to sell, so they need to advertise the product in the hopes that many will buy said product. In broad terms, the someone in this analogy is the police and prosecutors who need to sell the protect and serve product to the population. How? Press conferences, press releases, and let's not forget the all-encompassing election seasons. Now, think back. When was the last time you ever heard, "It's all sunshine and rainbows, folks. We don't need more funding. As a matter of fact, we're asking for a lower budget"? Never, right? Instead, you only hear how fill-in-the-blank crime of choice requires additional funding for more officers, newer vehicles, weapons, gear, technology, etc. So, the press and the public may ask later, well, what have you done with all that additional funding we gave you? Many times the answer is, we're happy you ask. You see, we've swept this many villains off of our streets. See all of these arrests and convictions we got? It was all for you, the taxpayer. Okay, so they made arrests and got convictions. But here's the twist. How many of those were very minor crimes? How many of those convictions were plea deals? Now, a plea bargain, or negotiating a plea, is an agreement between the prosecution and the defendant, where the defendant agrees to plead guilty, most likely to a lesser charge or fewer charges. The defendant avoids a costly trial along with the threat of perhaps a harsher punishment if it went to trial. According to the Department of Justice's Bureau of Justice Assistance, 90 to 95% of all criminal cases result in a plea bargain. Let me say that again. 90 to 95% of all criminal cases result in a plea bargain. Now, some folks may agree that this is a great deal for everybody, in many instances at least. The villain gets convicted of a crime, and the police and prosecutors save our tax dollars. What a bargain! But wait, let's take a closer look at that, shall we? In a January 2024 Newsweek article, reporter Suzanne Blake wrote, in the U.S., the average attorney rates run from $211 to $424 per hour. The majority of Americans can't afford one additional expense in any given month. According to Empower Research, 37% of Americans can't afford an emergency expense over $400. 56% of us can't afford a $1,000 emergency. So, just how many Americans do you think could afford tens of thousands of dollars or more in legal fees? It's apparent, whether we like to admit it or not, our legal system favors the affluent, those who can effortlessly afford legal fees. As of this recording, over 1.9 million people are incarcerated in the United States. This includes state and federal prisons, local jails, juvenile facilities, and detention centers. We jail more people per capita than any other country in the world. Our prison population has increased by 500% over the last 40 years. Well, that sure sounds like there's a whole lot of folks being arrested and prosecuted, right? But it seems curious that the legal system in this country is only truly prosecuting 5 to 10% of crimes. the accused who can't afford to fight the system, sadly, they pulled the go directly to jail, do not pass go, do not collect $200 card. Those with access to money, well, they can afford high-power attorneys who know how to work the system. So, oh no, let's not touch those with clout, money, and therefore power. Prosecuting people with a lot of funding cuts into the budget. Trials can drag on, and there's always a chance that the accused with prominent attorneys can get acquitted. Those trials are a gamble at best, and losing in a big case can mean the end of someone's re-election bid. So, where does it leave the majority of us? It's been said that the system will jail someone for stealing a loaf of bread to feed their family because it's an easy conviction. That low-hanging fruit is easy pickings. Can't fight back if you don't have the money, which adds to the conviction numbers. The higher the number of arrests and convictions affects the next budget and potential grant funding as well. Okay, I'll admit that's a bit of a rant, but the point I'm trying to make is that when we're looking at a single case involving very few people, where an assistant county attorney with years of experience, a police detective, and now an FBI agent, along with others in positions of authority and knowledge, have all agreed that there is an obvious crime being committed against an old woman who can't defend herself. And there's only a couple of folks in more powerful positions refusing to approve a few subpoenas so that these frontline defenders can do their frickin' jobs. It's all very disturbing, to say the least. Maybe maddening is a better word. And where does Darcy fit into all of this? Yes, she has access to money, but it doesn't appear anywhere that she has connections. Not old connections, anyway, that we've found yet. With all we've reported, discussed, and processed in the past 12 episodes, there's always a question that I hear time and time again. Is all of this Elizabeth's own fault? No doubt, if you're a consistent listener to this podcast, you already have a good idea that I might be a bit partial towards Elizabeth, even though I really tried at the very beginning to be at least fair. But as things have progressed and the things that I have learned, I will unashamedly admit that I have become very biased. How could I not be? Elizabeth, a retired doctor with Alzheimer's, abandoned, and also treated the way she has been, especially for these last couple of years. But even before all of this, how did it happen? How did a clearly brilliant woman allow herself to be subjected to such abuse for decades? Why did she return every single time she managed to leave Walter? Why did she allow him to keep her isolated, alienated from her own family, her friends, and her colleagues? Oh, there are so many stories that have accumulated up to now, each one more atrocious than the last. So I hope you join us soon for episode 14, Lost Sister, a Discarded Woman. We're going to title this one, Abuse, How It Starts. Abuse in all forms is an equal opportunity instrument of control, regardless of age, gender, IQ, education, or socioeconomic status. Whatever your age, for your own sake and those who care about you, please establish a living will. Keep it somewhere your chosen caretakers can access it. And if you don't have the assets in order, make plans right now to do so. Talk to an attorney and or an investment institution you trust and make it happen before it's too late. The terms elder abuse, elder neglect, and elder fraud are relatively new. In general, elder abuse is a term referring to any knowing, intentional, or neglectful act by a caregiver or any other person that causes harm or a serious risk of harm to a vulnerable elderly person. Legislators in all 50 states have passed some form of elder abuse prevention laws. A good place to start for more information is the website justice.gov/elderjustice. And if you suspect elder abuse, there is help. The National Elder Fraud Hotline is 1-833-FRAUD-11. That's 833-372-8311. A fantastic resource is the National Center on Elder Abuse website, ncea.acl.gov. The National Domestic Violence Hotline is 1-800-799-SAFE. That's 800-799-7233. Some states offer a scam alert that you can sign up for online. To find out if your state offers one, use the Google machine to search for your state's scam alert program. To report identity theft, contact the Federal Trade Commission at identitytheft.gov or call 1-877-438-4338. It's also suggested to contact the fraud department at your credit card issuer, bank, and other places you have accounts if you suspect fraud. These links and phone numbers are also located on the Lost Sister webpage, lostsister.buzzsprout.com. Also, please follow our Facebook page, Lost Sister, a Discarded Woman podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, please like, follow, and share with your friends and family. By gaining a wider audience, we hope to bring attention to not only Elizabeth and Catherine's story, but to shine an enormous light on all domestic abuse, elder abuse, domestic violence, and elder fraud. More must be done to protect the vulnerable in our society. Our hope is by sharing Elizabeth and Catherine's story that it might help others to avoid the same happening to them or someone they love. Thank you.